a wonderful turnout, and let me thank Lauren Jones for singing the national anthem, and Jonathan Taylor for encouraging you to do everything you can. And let me thank Cody Pruda for that wonderful and generous introduction. Cody, thank you so much. So let me begin by making a very short statement so the people of Kentucky will understand what kind of president I will be. And that is, I understand your new governor, Governor Bevin, is busy cutting health care and cutting education. So if you can imagine the kind of Governor Bevin is, think about Bernie Sanders as a president doing exactly the opposite of Governor Bevin. Now, I do not quite understand how in the year 2016, when we are living in a competitive global economy and when we need the best educated workforce in the world, I don't know why anybody is talking about cutting education. And when our goal should be to join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to all people as a right, I don't know why any governor would go about cutting health care. But it's not just Governor Bevin. Let me say a word to Mitch McConnell. I've known Mitch. You know Mitch as well, right? And the message to Senator McConnell, who I've known for many years, is that right now we have a major pension crisis all over this country. And it is acutely problematic right here in the state of Kentucky. As many of you may know, the retirement benefits and the pensions promised to coal miners are now being threatened. Wall Street vulture funds that take over coal companies like Patriot Coal, Alpha Natural Resources, and Walter Energy should not be allowed to break the promises that were made to coal miners with respect to their pensions and their health care benefits. You know, it is not hard to understand why so many people are losing faith in our entire system. Promises decades and decades ago were made to these coal miners. And in many instances, the coal miners gave up pay benefits, health care benefits, in order to make sure that when they got old and retired, they would have a decent pension. It is morally unacceptable that now, after years of sacrifice, years of hard work, that those promises are now ended and the rug pulled out underneath these coal miners. And the truth is that the United Mine Workers pension plan today, for a variety of reasons, is on the brink of failure. Some 90,000 workers and retirees are at risk of having their pension benefits slashed by 30, 40, or 50%. In the Senate, a number of us are doing everything we can to prevent that from happening and to protect those pensions. Several senators, both Republican and Democrats, have come together with strong legislation. Last December, a deal was struck, an agreement was reached by a bipartisan group of senators and members of Congress to include a plan in the budget agreement that would have fixed this problem for coal miners. But at the last minute, Senator McConnell, the most powerful member of the United States Senate, removed that provision from the budget deal. Frankly, it is very hard for me to understand, really is, why he would remove a provision that benefited so many people in his very own state. But together, we are going to maintain that fight not only for the pensions of Kentucky coal miners, but for the pensions of millions of other workers who might lose benefits that were promised to them. Let me talk politics a little bit. You know, when we began, hey, why not? We're at a political rally, let's talk politics. Now, on the other hand, we could talk about the weather. Nice. And before we even get into politics, let me say, oh, this is solid, Jesus. Whoa, that's pretty solid. Let me say a word about this. As I understand it, this beautiful train was built in Louisville. And when we look at our infrastructure today, what we are looking at is an infrastructure in many respects which is crumbling. All right, our roads, in Vermont we got potholes. People go into those potholes, we don't see them for weeks. We thaw them out in the springtime. And our bridges are in disrepair all over this country, not just in Flint, Michigan. Communities are worried about the quality of the water that they are drinking.
Yeah.
We used to have in this country, way back when this car was built, we used to have the strongest rail system in the entire world. We once did. We no longer do. And I believe that the time is now to create 13 million decent paying jobs, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, including our rail system. So I want to see trains like this built in the United States of America once again.
Yeah.
But that was a detour to my political message. And my political message is that we began this campaign a little bit over a year ago. And when we began, this campaign was considered to be a fringe campaign. Nobody believed that we would be in Kentucky in early May fighting for the Democratic nomination. Nobody believed that at this point in the campaign we would have won 19 state primaries. Nobody would have believed that we would receive well over 9 million votes at this point in the campaign. And very few people would have believed that this coming Tuesday we're going to win a great victory right here in Kentucky. And by the way, I think we're going to win in Oregon as well. So, and then on June 7th, we got California and a bunch of other states. So where we are, let me be very honest with you. We started this campaign 50, 60, 70 points behind Secretary Clinton. We have come a very long way in the last year. And politically, where we are right now is we have won about 45.5% of the pledged delegates. Our goal by the end of this process is to win 50% of the pledged delegates plus one. We got to get that other guy. And if we win 50% plus one, and I got my eye on that guy. I think we have a right to tell the Democratic National Convention that we should be the candidate for President of the United States. And there are a number of reasons that we together, I'm using the word we, in Vermont we do that a lot, but in this case it is very important we, because I see all the signs, Bernie, 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 and I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. But this campaign is not about Bernie, it is about you and your families, and all of us. It's not just that I cannot win without your support. I will not be able to do as president what has to be done unless the people in Kentucky and 49 other states stand up together and fight back and demand that we have a government that represents all of us, not the 1%. So our immediate task in the next 5 weeks is to win a majority of the pledged delegates and then to make the case to the so-called super delegates. You know what a super delegate is? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? It is a super delegate. All right, flying over the sky. All right. Now here's what's interesting about Democratic super delegates, and you have to think of the American people who are Democrats have got to think this through. Before anybody else even announced a candidacy for the Democratic nomination, 450 superdelegates were pledged to Hillary Clinton. And that is the way the establishment works. In other words, you create a situation where it is impossible for the people to stand up and have a voice. So I say to those 450 delegates, think very hard about which candidate and which campaign is best likely to beat Donald Trump. Here is why I think we are in the best position. Number one, if you look at any of the polls that have been done in the last 6 weeks or so, virtually every single one of them, national polls and state polls, have us, all of us, doing significantly better than Hillary Clinton in the race against Donald Trump. And the reason for that is really not hard to understand politically. It is that we do very well with Democrats, but we also do very well with independents. And the Democratic leadership may not know it yet, but independents are the fastest growing segment of the American political system. Number two, and even more important, and that is Republicans win elections when people are demoralized, when they've kind of given up on the political process, and when we have low voter turnouts. And I understand your governor won with a low voter turnout. Republicans in 2014 took over the Senate, gained seats in the House, won governor's chairs all over America. And you know what? In that election, 63% of the American people did not vote. Democrats and progressives win elections when people are excited, when they are energized, when they see hope for the future. When many workers have given up on the political system, they are demoralized. They look around them and they say, people have been promising me this, they've been promising me that, and yet I'm working longer hours for lower wages if I'm lucky enough to have a job. All right? And young people, many young people have never yet voted the first time. And what our campaign has done, is I believe we have created a level of energy and excitement not seen in this country for a very, very long time. And that is why we can win the presidency. It's not just the polls that are out there. It is the fact that if we have an energized American voter who is now prepared to stand up and fight back, we can have a very, very large voter turnout in November. And when that occurs, not only do we retain the White House, we're going to regain the Senate. I know. I got to tell the people of Kentucky this. Mitch McConnell will not be the majority leader. And maybe then we can do something for the retired coal miners and protecting their pensions. But that is the way I think we can bring about change, is when millions of people are prepared to stand up, look to the future, when young people understand that as young people, they are the future of this country and they have a right to help shape that future. Now, this campaign has been doing as well as it has because we're doing something quite unusual. We are telling the truth. And here is the truth. The truth is that today we pride ourselves on being a democratic society, but every single day that democracy that we pride ourselves on is becoming weaker and weaker because big money interests are now buying elections. And let us be honest about it. Right now in this country, we have a corrupt campaign finance system. Democracy is not a complicated concept. It means that you gotta vote, you gotta vote, you gotta vote. One person, one vote. It does not mean that billionaires can spend hundreds of millions of dollars to buy elections. That's not democracy. That is called oligarchy. You know, I read something, I don't know if it's pathetic or funny, depending on your perspective. Does anybody here know who Sheldon Adelson is? Sheldon Adelson is worth, I don't know, $40-50 billion, one of the richest people in America. He has announced that he is going to provide a lot of money for the campaign of Donald Trump. That is where we are. You got a billionaire running for president who's getting help from other billionaires. That doesn't sound to me like the democracy we need in America. So this campaign is saying as loudly and as clearly as we can, and I got a pretty loud voice when it's working well. Tonight, not so good. But that loud voice is saying that we're together. We're going to do everything that we can to end the movement toward oligarchy in this country. We're going to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. We are going to move toward public funding of elections so that anybody, conservative, moderate, progressive, can run for office without having to beg millionaires for campaign contributions. Now, while I'm in Kentucky, the state of Senator McConnell, let me also say this. I think that Citizens United Supreme Court decision was one of the worst decisions in the history of the United States Supreme Court. Senator McConnell thinks that Citizens United did not go far enough. His vision of democracy is not just that billionaires and corporations can put money into super PACs. He wants those individuals to be able to directly fund a candidate. You know those NASCAR jackets that the drivers wear? Sponsored by this guy, sponsored by... If Mitch McConnell has his way, we're going to have United States senators. Hey, I'm proud, I'm sponsored by ExxonMobil. I'm sponsored by the pharmaceutical industry. Hey, look at me. I'm sponsored by Wall Street. In other words, they don't even have to go through the farce of an independent expenditure or go through a super PAC. McConnell would have us have the day when the Koch brothers and Sheldon Adelson and these billionaires can literally hire people to run for the United States Senate and for Congress. How insulting is that to the men and women of our country, the veterans of our country who put their lives on the line to defend American democracy. But it is not just a corrupt campaign finance system that we have got to change. It is a rigged economy. A rigged economy is when we have more income and wealth inequality than any other major country on earth. A rigged economy is when that inequality is worse today than it has been since 1928 in America. Here's what a rigged economy is. It is when the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. A rigged economy is when the 20 wealthiest people in this country own more wealth than the bottom half of America, 150 million Americans. A rigged economy is when over the last 25 years, trillions of dollars in wealth have left the hands of working families and have gone to the top 1/10 of 1%. A rigged economy is when one family, the Walton family of Walmart, owns more wealth, one family, than the bottom 42% of the American people. And here's what is even uglier about the rigged economy. It is not just a grotesque level of income and wealth inequality. It is when the middle class and working families subsidize the wealthiest people. Today, we got any people here work at Walmart? Okay, I got some hands. See a very young man who's working there. Today, think about this for a moment. You got many employees in Walmart, owned by the wealthiest family in America, who are earning wages that are so low that in order to survive, these workers have got to get Medicaid and food stamps. Who is paying for those for that Medicaid and food stamps to help those workers survive? It's the middle class of this country. So you have the absurd situation that working people are paying higher taxes to subsidize the wages that the wealthiest family in this country is paying its workers. Now, I know here in Kentucky, I'm sure, and in Republican states all over this country, we hear about people ripping off welfare. The major welfare rip-off artist in this country is not some poor person. It is the wealthiest family in this country, the Walton family. And I say to the Walton family, get off of welfare. You don't need billions of dollars of help from the American people. Pay your workers a living wage. And then, to complete this absurd loop, we got a member of the Walton family, I think her name was Alice Walton, who has contributed $300,000 to one of Hillary Clinton's campaign funds. On and on it goes. A rigged economy is when corporations in a given year may make billions of dollars in profit and then stash their profits in the Cayman Islands and in other tax havens and pay less in taxes than you do. But it is not only wealth inequality. A rigged economy is when in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, millions of working people are working 2 or 3 jobs, just to cobble together the income and the health care they need so their family can survive. A rigged economy is when mom is working, when dad is working, and when the children are working. A rigged economy is when marriages suffer because parents are stressed out and not having the quality time to spend with each other. A rigged economy is when children don't get the attention they need from their parents because their parents are too busy making a living. A rigged economy is when, as a result of exploding technology, almost all workers in America produce more. And yet, at the end of the day, millions of workers are working for lower wages in real dollars, longer hours for lower wages than they used to. That is a rigged economy. And what we are going to do together, not such a radical idea, you know what we're going to do? We're going to create an economy that works for all of us, not just the working people, but our children, our parents and our seniors, veterans in this country. We have the capability in this country, we have the productivity in this country, we have the technology in this country, we have the brains and the hard work in this country to create a nation and an economy that works for all of our people and not just the few on top. What does that mean specifically? What does it mean? For a start, it is my view that if somebody in America works 40 hours a week, that person should not be living in poverty. That means that we're going to raise the minimum wage in the United States to $15 an hour. Number 2, we're going to end the unfairness of women making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. Women want the whole damn dollar, and they're entitled to that dollar. And number 3, as I mentioned earlier, I want to see a rail system in America today. I want to see our roads and our bridges and our wastewater plants and our levees and our dams. I want to see them rebuilt, and we're going to create 13 million good-paying jobs rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. Let me say to corporate America and the billionaire class, you cannot continue to have it all. This country belongs to all of us, not just you. And that means that the people who own hedge funds on Wall Street are going to start paying their fair share of taxes. And when we talk about an economy that works for all of us, we have got to recognize that the greed, the recklessness, and the illegal behavior of people on Wall Street caused the worst economic downturn in the modern history of this country. And Congress, against my vote, bailed them out. And yet today, 3 out of the 4 largest banks are bigger now than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. We need a financial system which is prepared to help small and medium-sized businesses, not a financial system that is a world unto themselves, only concerned about their own profits. And that is why I believe the time is now to break them up. This campaign is going to address not only a corrupt campaign finance system and a rigged economy, we are going to put an end to a broken criminal justice system. It is not acceptable to me, nor I think to you, that in this great country we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. And what we're going to do is go to those communities all over America, in rural America and in the inner cities of this country, where youth unemployment is 30, 40, 50%, where kids are hanging out on street corners with nothing to do. What we are going to do is invest in those young people in jobs and education, not jails and incarceration. And we're also going to take a hard look at local police departments all over this country. I was a mayor for 8 years in Burlington, Vermont. I work very closely with the police, and I've worked with police officers all over this country. The average police officer is hardworking, is honest, and is trying to do a very difficult job. But like any other public official, if a police officer breaks the law in America, that officer should be held accountable. We have got to demilitarize local police departments. We've got to make police departments look like the diversity of the communities they are serving. We have got to create a culture within police departments around this country which says that lethal force, killing somebody, is the last response, not the first response. We have got to end private ownership of prisons and detention centers. We have got to rethink the so-called war on drugs. Too many people's lives have been ruined because of arrests associated with possession of marijuana. And yet today, in the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is considered a Schedule I drug right next to heroin. In my view, we should take marijuana out of that Federal Controlled Substance Act. But here is another issue related to drugs which we are going to have to deal with. And that is, I know that in Kentucky, and I know that